In the last lesson, we discovered that Apple really wants us to only use HTTPS URLs, but if BaasBox uses an HTTP one, we have to put an exception in. Um, you can see here in the error, temporary exceptions can be configured via your app's info.plist file. Well, that's exactly what we're going to go ahead and do. Let's go back to the Project Navigator. Now let's go to the info.plist file, and we're going to add an exception. So we are going to, in here, control click, and we're going to add a row. And we're going to add the row app transport security settings. And notice that it becomes a dictionary. And then we're going to see the plus sign next to this row. We're going to add that. And then instead of changing it directly, I'm going to control click or right click and I'm going to shift row right. And as I shift row right, my options change. And you can see I have this allow arbitrary loads. I'm going to choose that and make the value of it yes. So I just added an app transport security line, changes allow arbitrary loads, and let's go ahead and run that to see if it works. Alright, so let's put in default, and let's put in password as my password. It's a pretty cruddy password. Well, I'm getting some sort of error here, and it doesn't show up the whole thing. But there's a quick fix for that too. So we need to add 2 lines to our login view controller to allow BaasBox to work. And we're going to put that above our view did load. And these are required in it. And it's this nib name. Actually, no, we'll do that one. And then we're going to initialize call it nib name or nil. And this will be nib bundle or nil. And then let's do this above this, required init. We'll use the coder, and the code will be super.init a decoder. Stop. So it looks like I still have an error here, and if I click on this, I used required. I should have put override, and that should take care of that error. These 2 lines are required at the top to use BaasBox. If you want to look at the documentation to figure out why, I leave that up to you. But just make sure they are included at the top of your BaasBox file. Okay, so let's try to run this one more time. So now I'm at my login screen. I'll put in default password. I'll go ahead and log in. I'm still getting an error. Stop. Notice I'm getting an error, and that's because I was clicking the login button. But since this user doesn't exist yet, we need to actually implement the sign up feature to allow this user to log in. So let's go ahead and stop this. And let's implement the sign up tapped. Well, the good news is this is going to be pretty easy since the code is almost exactly the same. Instead of authenticate user, it's going to create user. So in the instance of sheer laziness, I'm going to copy this code, paste it down here in the sign up tapped, and then instead of authenticate user, I'm going to use create user with username. Oops, so let me undo that. Create user with username. And I still need a username and a password, but in this case, I'm creating a user instead of just authenticating user. Everything else should be exactly the same. So let's go ahead and run this. And let's see if this time it finally works. So I'll create my default user, password, sign up this time, and we really can't tell, but well, here's our label. It says logged in. So we were successfully logged in. Let me go ahead and shrink this down a little bit so we can see the whole thing. Now we know that this works. Now the good thing is, once I'm logged in, if I stop the application and I run it again, it knows that I'm logged in. It knows that I'm already authenticated. And unless I delete this app from the simulator, I'm going to remain logged in. I could create a log out button on this home screen to allow me to log out, but I'm just going to stay logged in for the rest of the time. So now we've successfully logged in, we've got a login controller working, and now we can actually get to actually writing the quiz functions itself. And we'll start that in the next lesson.